Okay, everybody, thank y'all so much for your patience. I have been sick. You're probably hearing some of my sinuses. I don't sound the same. I know. I've been sick for the last week and a half, so I didn't put a video out. I apologize for that. I'm going to be reviewing another Fat Electrician video because I have not reviewed Nick in the last month. So this is a month later. And he has this new video that he uploaded talking about Bud Lomell. And I'm interested in jumping in and watching this. One, because of the way that Nick looks at history, goes in, deep dives, and pulls out and makes history entertaining, especially for military history. So here we go, Nick. Let's take it away.
Who is the most important man of D-Day? If you get on the internet or you get in a history book and you ask that question, you're going to overwhelmingly be hit with the answer. It's General Eisenhower, which makes sense. He's the officer in charge of the entire operation, but that's not really what we're asking now, is it? I mean, when you have an Amazon package getting delivered, you're not exactly worried about what Jeff Bezos is up to make sure you get your package, right? You want to know where that mail carrier is.
That's
you
right.
want to know who the person is on the ground actually getting the work done.
Right.
156,000 men took to the beaches at Normandy, and all of them had an incredibly important job. Take this objective, secure that area, make sure this happens, make sure that happens. But out of all of those missions, one of them had to have been deemed the most important. What is that mission, and who is the man that went out there and got it done? That's what we're asking. Today we're talking about Leonard Lomell, aka Bud. Despite being one of the first men wounded on D-Day, he quite literally shrugged off his gunshot wound and proceeded to lead his men into combat for 3 straight days with virtually no food, no water, and no sleep to accomplish what is deemed as the most vital aspect of the D-Day assault, according to General Omar Bradley. And
Okay, wait a second. He shook off a gunshot wound and did all this? Oh yeah, this one's going to be good, y'all. Buckle up.
We're going to get into it right after a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Ridge Wallet. All right, we've talked about this before. Ridge Wallet's awesome because it helps combat a rare medical condition known as dad wallet, okay? There are actually men out there wandering around, carrying around a wallet in their back pocket that resembles a Chipotle burrito. The problem is that most men that suffer from dad wallet are in denial about it, so there's a very simple test that we can do. Open up that purse with no strap that you call a wallet, and if you still have a Blockbuster card inside of it, you have dad wallet. Sitting on a dad wallet like that is ruining your hips and it's ruining your lower back. You need to get rid of all of the junk inside of that wallet, pick out like the 5 to 7 cards that you actually use, put them inside of a Ridge wallet and start putting it in your front pocket. And I know what you're thinking, I don't like these metal wallets, I'm old school, I prefer leather. Congratulations, Ridge is making leather wallets now too. You have zero excuse, and to make it even better, they've got leather matching phone cases, okay? So now your OCD is happy because all your stuff is matching and your back is gonna feel better. You're welcome. So go check out Ridge Wallet. I'm gonna have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video.
All right, time out. I'm going to endorse this ad. I don't have a Ridge wallet. Sorry, don't. I've got I don't know what this is, but it is a front pocket wallet. I don't have a dad wallet. It's got a money clip on the back. I've got a room for a couple cards here. I've got my driver's license here and my CAC card to get into the base there. And it rides in my front right pocket. That is because if you sit, what he was talking about there, if you sit on that dad wallet long enough, you're going to have sciatic nerve issues. I suggest you follow his directions, go to Ridge Wallet and grab you one of these good looking things.
All right, our story begins on January 22nd, 1920, when Leonard Lomell was born in Brooklyn, New York. Shortly after that, his parents would move him out to New Jersey, and that's where he would spend the rest of his childhood growing up. He's the youngest of 4 siblings, having 3 older sisters, and both of his parents are first-generation immigrants from Norway. And like pretty much everybody else that fought during World War II, he grew up during the Great Depression. And as I'm sure you can imagine, being the son of 2 first-generation immigrants during the Great Depression was not really that great of a time. Because of that, his childhood was extremely busy. When he wasn't going to school, he was playing sports. He played football, he boxed and he played baseball. And when he wasn't doing that, he was working. If he wasn't sleeping, it was go time 24/7 throughout his entire childhood. Leonard was straight up hustling his entire childhood. He had his own business where he would catch clams and fish and sell them to local restaurants. He also worked as a caddy at the local golf course. He also ran the local bingo hall. And in addition to that, he even had a job as a delivery driver for a laundry service when he was 16 years old.
Damn,
and then he got fired after about a month because they found out he didn't have a driver's license. If there was money to be made, he was going to do whatever he had to make it. Despite all of that, he still made time to have a 1-hour piano lesson every single day. Fast forward, he graduates from high school, and when he gets home, both of his parents sit him down, and he remembers this because it's the first time he's ever seen his dad cry, as his dad tells him, "Len, I don't have any money to help you go to college." Now, his parents are both older at this point to have a son just graduating high school. His father is 69 years old, and they have been poor his entire childhood, and he's watched his dad work his ass off the entire time. Len was not fazed by this at all. Not only did he not expect his parents to have money for him to go to college, he fully intended to go off to college, work, and send money back home to help support them. And that's exactly what he did. He went off and he applied to every single college that he could, and only one of them was willing to give him an athletic scholarship, and that was Tennessee Wesleyan College. So that's where he went to school. And then when he wasn't playing football, he was working as much as he could to send money back home to his parents. Now, while he was going to college, the draft had started. So he figures, hey, I'm probably going to end up getting drafted anyways. So I might as well go off and try to join one of the military academies, because then I get to become an officer and I'll make even more money, which is going to allow me to send more money back home to my parents. So he wants to start applying to all the military academies, especially West Point. The problem is he goes up to the recruiter or the liaison and he's talking to him. He has all the paperwork, but he needs his birth certificate and he doesn't have it. Not only does he not have it, he doesn't even know if he has one. It's not uncommon for people born in the 1920s and the 1930s to just not have a birth certificate. A lot of people were born at home and he honestly has no idea. And mom and dad don't have a house phone, so he ends up calling his older sister and is like, hey, do I even have a birth certificate? Do you know? Do mom and dad have it? Do I need to go figure out how to go get one? What's the deal here? And his sister gets like all quiet and awkward over the phone, and she's like, I think it's best that you just come to my house and we'll talk about it. So he's like, all right, this is weird, but whatever. So he sets up a time and he goes over to his sister's house and they meet up. So he shows up at his older sister's house. She answers the door. She's being all awkward. She's got tears in her eyes. And he's like, what is the big deal? I'm just trying to get a birth certificate. What is going on? And she kind of sits him down and she's like, bud, you were adopted. And he's like, okay, cool. So like, do you have the birth certificate or not? Like, he was completely unfazed by the entire thing. And his sister is like distraught and she's crying and she's like, what? You don't care? And he's like, no, not really. I had 2 terrific parents and great sisters. I love you guys. It makes literally 0 impact on my life. I'm just trying to get this birth certificate so I can go off to West Point. How do I go about getting it? And his sister is like, okay, look, I'll get the birth certificate from mom and dad. You just have to promise me that you won't let them know that you know that you're adopted, because it means a lot to them, because they really do want you to know that you're their actual son. And Bud, just completely unfazed still, is like, yeah, okay, cool, great, just get the birth certificate. I got stuff to do. Okay, great, wonderful, bye. While his sister's figuring that out, he finishes up, graduates from college in 1941, moves back home to New Jersey, where he starts working for the railroad as he starts getting the rest of the paperwork together and applying to all the military academies. And then before he can get accepted into a military academy, he ends up getting drafted, and so that kind of blows a hole in his entire plan. So Bud goes off to training and he absolutely crushes it for multiple reasons. 1, that's just the type of guy that he is. If he's going to do something, he wants to do a good job at it. And for 2, he's smart. He realizes that the U.S. military is expanding rapidly. And with that rapid expansion, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for promotion. And if he's the best guy around, he's going to get that promotion. And when he gets that promotion, he's going to get more money, which means he's going to have more money to send back home to mom and dad. So not only is he just coming at this as, you know, I want to do a good job, I want to survive. This man is already competing for his family to eat food back home, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is an entirely different level of motivation that a lot of other recruits simply just don't have. Because of that, after he completes training, he goes off to his unit at the 76th Infantry Division and he rapidly climbs the ranks. In a matter of like a year, he achieves the rank of first sergeant, which, if you don't know, is absolutely crazy. Like, by today's standards, that's literally impossible. I think the fastest that you could make first sergeant today, if you did everything 110% correct and you were a literal prodigy, would be 9 years, and Leonard Lomell just did it.
Wait a second now. Y'all need to understand something. First sergeant is not a sergeant first class. Sergeant first class is an E7 in the Army. You have to be an E8 or a master sergeant to be considered for first sergeant or sergeant major. This is remarkable.
In like one. So because he was such a hot shot, he gets offered by his chain of command to go out to this high-speed school known as Ranger and Combat School, which is a precursor to what we know today as the Army Rangers. If you don't know, the 75th Ranger Regiment today is a special forces unit, and the easiest way I can explain this to you is they're essentially America's sharpest blunt instrument, okay? They're America's premier shock troops. They basically just took the top 1% of all the grunts, stuck them in one unit, and then they send them out to destroy things on impossible missions. And that's basically how they pitch it to Lomell. This is a school that you can go to, become a better leader, a better soldier, and then also they're going to be picking some of the best guys out of it to go into this new special forces unit called the Army Rangers that are going to get sent out on the toughest, most dangerous missions. And obviously he agrees to do it because it's going to make him look that much better come time for his next promotion. So he goes out to this Ranger course. There's 200 recruits. They strip them down. They take their rank off. All they have is this matching jumpsuit, and they beat the holy hell out of these guys for weeks. They barely feed them. They barely give them water. They're making them do hand-to-hand combat training all day long. They're doing ruck marches. They're doing physical training. It is an absolute nightmare.
This is nothing like the recruiting brochure.
By the time that training's over, that class of 200 high-speed soldiers has been whittled down to 60, and Leonard Lomell is one of them. Not only is he one of the 60 that made it, he is one of the very best, and he is personally asked by the general in charge if he wants to become an Army Ranger because they are standing up the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and they are looking for new recruits. And to the general's shock, Lomell actually tells him he'd have to think about it. This kind of catches the general off guard, right? I mean, this is a big deal. He just went through Ranger school. Surely he wants to be a Ranger. Why wouldn't this guy say yes immediately? So he kind of pushes him on it, and Lomell tells him like, hey, look, I'd love to do it, but here's the deal. At the end of the day, I'm here for whoever's going to pay me the most money. If I go back to my old unit, I'm going to be a first sergeant. I don't want to come into the Ranger unit, have to take a pay cut and be like, you know, a corporal or just a regular sergeant or something. So, you know, unless you guys are going to make me a first sergeant and a Ranger first sergeant pays more than a first sergeant back in my normal infantry division, I'm going to have to think about it. At which point the general's like, cool, you're a first sergeant in the Rangers and you'll get paid more than them. At which point Lomell is like, dope, I'm in. And just like that, Leonard Lomell is now the very first sergeant of Dog Company of the 2nd Ranger Battalion. So Lomell goes, he gets all his boys from Dog Company, they start training right away, and you gotta remember, they're standing up the 2nd Ranger Battalion at this point, okay? It is a complete and utter shit show. When you're standing up a new unit, it's not just like you throw a bunch of guys together and you're like, hey, you're on a team now. No, a unit has its own culture. It has its own standard operating procedures. They have to build all of that from the ground up, and Leonard Lomell and his guys in Dog Company are there for every single second of it. And right out of the gate, it's rough. The Army's having a very tough time finding the right officers to lead this unique unit into battle, right? They're constantly rotating out battalion and company commanders trying to find the right guys. And then they finally end up finding the right man to lead the 2nd Ranger Battalion, a lieutenant colonel by the name of Big Jim Rutter. On his very first day, he calls the entire battalion in and gives his, you know, introductory speech on his mission and what he's trying to accomplish with the unit. And I'm paraphrasing here, but basically what he says is, look, here's the deal. I'm going to train the holy hell out of you guys. I need you to do everything I ask you to do at 110%. And in exchange, I'm going to do absolutely everything I can for you. I'm going to have your back. I'm going to be your guy, and I'm going to get you as much leave as I possibly can. If you give me everything you got, I'm going to give you everything I can in exchange. And that is just the beginning of the leadership clinic that Jim Rutter is about to put on. He starts having monthly gripe sessions for the entire battalion to air out their grievances and what they see wrong with the battalion and everything going wrong around them. And he's willing to listen to every single man under his command, even the lowest ranking private. One of the first things the Rangers complained about was that the food wasn't very good. So Jim Rutter had the cooks sent back to cook school to relearn how to do their job. Then they came back a couple weeks later and the Rangers still said the food wasn't good enough. So Jim Rutter sent them back to school again.
We'll have the spaghetti with a side salad.
Okay.
If the salad is on top, I send it back.
On another occasion, a private at one of these gripe sessions has the balls to stand up in front of the entire battalion and say, sir, when I volunteered for the Rangers, I was told that every Ranger would receive a pocket watch, and I wasn't given one. Now, to us today, this seems kind of silly or petty, but you have to put this into context, right? Back in the 1940s, watches were very much considered a luxury item because they didn't have little tiny cheap digital watches that you could buy for $15 and know what time it was. The only watches around at this time were mechanical watches and more commonly automatic watches, which are the ones that are self-winding with all the little tiny gears and springs on the inside. They're very hard to manufacture with these tiny little itty-bitty pieces. Due to the difficulty of manufacturing and the fact that the Army is growing exponentially, they simply can't manufacture watches fast enough to be able to give every person in the military a watch, despite the fact that the Army does have a standard issued watch, the A11. So at this point in time, not everybody's getting a watch. They're reserving them for the people that need them the most. People like pilots, people in leadership positions. They're definitely not giving them out to every lowly private that's just there to take orders. But this isn't just a lowly private. This is a private in the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and he was promised a watch to be a Ranger. And because of that, Jim Rutter takes off his personal watch in front of everybody and gives it to the private. So obviously Jim Rutter is an incredible leader, but more importantly than that, he's also a visionary that has all kinds of crazy training that he's gonna have these Rangers do. And one of the most important things that he actually does is he goes and he gets his hands on all of the German firearms, right? He gets MG42s, he gets burp guns, he gets all the German weapons, and he trains his entire Ranger Battalion on how to disassemble, reassemble, clean, and fire all of the German weapons, because he knows that they're gonna send him into a mission and they're gonna run out of ammo, and they might have to start picking up guns off of all the dead Germans that they've killed. So he wants every single man in the Ranger Battalion to be able to use those weapons. In addition to that, they also do a bunch of chemical warfare training in case the Germans want to break out the mustard gas like they did last time. And then after that, they mostly focus on climbing. And the way they go about that is they end up shipping over to Great Britain, and the entire battalion is staying inside of this hotel that's on a cliff overlooking the ocean, okay? And they get there and they...
Holy hell. I was just fixing to order an A11 watch. The cheapest one I see on Amazon, that's not an A11, that's a Timex. The cheapest A11 that I see that is a Spec 2 vintage military field watch is $215. Wow. Yeah, all right. I understand why he wanted his watch now.
They have the battalion meeting, they explain that we're doing climbing training, and then Jim Rutter walks all the guys. There's like this carved in staircase that goes down this 80-foot cliff that goes down to the ocean. He's like, these are the cliffs that we're gonna be climbing. Also, this is the only time we're using that staircase. And everybody is kind of looking around like, what? How are we going to get down here if we're not using the stairs? Every single morning to get to training, the Rangers have to go up to the 3rd story of the hotel, tie a rope to the radiator, throw it out the window, rappel down the side of the hotel, run across the yard, scale the chain link fence where the cliff is so nobody falls off, and then rappel down the 80-foot cliff just to get to the beach to get to training on how to climb. And once they're down there, they do all different types of climbing. They're climbing with grappling hooks and ropes, they're climbing with nets, they're free climbing. Any and every technique they have available, they're getting super good at. And around this time in training, one of the sergeants for Dog Company accidentally drops an entire ammo bag on the men down below him, and somebody ends up getting injured. The company commander ends up ordering Lomell to bust this guy down from sergeant to private, which is a big deal, getting demoted from NCO all the way back down to private. It's a big pay cut. It sucks. Lomell doesn't want to do it. It was an accident, but he's ordered to do it by the company commander, so he has to go ahead and he does it. And this sergeant, now private, doesn't take it very well, and he says something along the lines of, you know what, that's fine, first sergeant. Once the battle starts, first sergeants always get what's coming to them, and I'll see you in battle. Kind of like this veiled threat, and Lomell's like, okay, whatever. Sorry.
Sounds
sorry,
like
you're
it to
upset.
me.
Anyways, moving on. They get back to training and they're climbing more. And while they continue their climbing training, they find out that not only are they going to be partaking in D-Day, but they're going to be given the most dangerous and most important mission of the entire D-Day assault. Overlooking the American landing sites of Omaha and Utah Beach for D-Day, there is a point known as Point Dhawk, and on top of it is 6 German 155mm artillery pieces. If these artillery pieces are allowed to remain functional during the landings, it will lead to the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans and potentially the sinking of Navy vessels because it overlooks the surrounding ocean as well. The problem is the only way to get up there to destroy that artillery is to climb a 110-foot cliff face while the Germans are shooting at you. This is deemed absolutely impossible by military intelligence. One of the military intelligence reports literally says, and I quote, 3 old women with brooms could repel a landing force at Point Dhawk. General Bradley in his memoir recalls this order as the most difficult thing he's ever asked of anyone in his 40-year-long career. Because of this, they give the Rangers anything and everything they think they might need to be successful, and they're allowed to come up with whatever plan they think is going to work, because at this point, they're basically the climbing experts in the US military. They get them aerial footage, so they know the terrain. They build them 3D models so every single ranger in the 2nd Ranger Battalion can remember every little tiny aspect of Point du Hoc. So the plan is they're going to show up to Point du Hoc and try to disable this artillery prior to the first wave of D-Day, because remember, that's the entire point. They have to get this artillery disabled before everybody else starts landing on the beach, right? So not only are they being given this difficult task of climbing a 100-foot cliff under enemy gunfire, nobody else is there, so they get the Germans' undivided attention the entire time. So the obvious question, how on earth are you actually going to do this and have any amount of success? Hear me out. We're going to take all of the landing ships and we're going to mount gigantic grappling hooks onto rocket launchers, and we're just going to beach the ships and fire rocket-propelled grappling hooks up over the cliff and start climbing as fast as humanly possible. And then as soon as some of the guys start making it to the top of the cliff and getting in a firefight with the Germans, and the Germans have their hands occupied with that, we're going to bring in another landing ship that's got a fire truck ladder on it that can reach to the top of this cliff. We're going to beach that and then use the fire truck ladder to funnel more guys up the cliff even faster. And at the top of that fire truck ladder is going to be a guy with 3 Vickers machine guns. So he's just going to pop up from over this cliff edge with 3 machine guns and start mowing down Germans. It's the craziest fucking plan I've ever heard in my life.
So what do you need besides a miracle?
Guns. Lots of guns.
No one has ever done anything like this.
That's why it's going to work.
You remember a couple of minutes ago when I said the Rangers are the US military's sharpest blunt instrument? This is exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Their strategy is to run face first into the German defenses and just be so fast and so overtly aggressive that they win anyways. I mean, could you imagine being a German soldier, seeing a bunch of American ships roll up and they're like, oh, hey, the Americans are here, and suddenly gigantic fucking grappling hooks strapped to rockets start landing 100 feet up this cliff next to you. You're like, what the fuck is going on? And then as soon as you're able to get your shoes on and grab your gun and go do something about it, a fucking fire truck ladder pops up from over the side of this cliff with a dude with 3 fucking machine guns. He's only got 2 arms. What does he need 3 machine guns for? This is the most American shit I've ever heard of in my entire life. I mean, we've all heard the expression, it's faster to switch to your sidearm than it is to reload, but we've never heard the expression, it's faster to switch to your tertiary machine gun than it is to reload your first 2 machine guns. So that's really the entire game plan, just straight up brute force and ignorance. Hit the enemy so hard, so fast that the fight is over before they even know they're in a fight. All right, D-Day, this is the part where I wish I could tell you that they rolled up, everything went according to plan, and it was quick, violent, and over. We win, hooray. But that's not what happened, because it was a shit show the entire time. Here's what's going on. It's supposed to be about an hour and 20-minute boat ride in a British LCA. Think of it as like a bigger version of an American Higgins boat, and we've got the British Navy piloting these ships. And while that's going on, we've decided we're not just going to use the element of surprise. Instead, we're going to pound Point du Hoc with aerial bombardment and naval bombardment from the USS Texas and the USS Arkansas, and then we're going to stop bombarding it right as the Rangers roll up. That way, by the time they get the courage to poke their heads out, the Rangers have already scaled the cliff. That's the plan that we're going with. And the first problem is half the Rangers have food poisoning. Last night for dinner, they gave these guys hot dogs, and one of the batches of hot dogs was tainted, and now about half the Rangers are puking inside of the LCAs. And on top of that, the seas are rougher than they anticipated, which is making it even worse. It's so bad that water is getting inside the ships, and Leonard Lomell literally has to order all the men in his LCA to start using their helmets as a shovel to start bucketing water out of the boat so it doesn't sink. This is supposed to be about an hour and 20-minute boat ride to get from the big ships all the way to the beach, and they're just sitting there going up and down in the seas. Dudes are sick, they're puking, they're looking over at Point du Hoc, and it is just getting pounded by the British RAF dropping bombs and American naval gunfire hitting this point over and over and over again. It's so loud these guys can't even hear themselves think. One of them actually leans over to Leonard Lomell and screams at the top of his lungs just so Leonard could hear, "I wonder if they know we're coming." As they get closer and closer to the shore, both Lieutenant Colonel Rudder and Lomell realize that the British coxswains that are driving these boats are taking them to the wrong drop-off point. It takes a while, but they argue with the British. They're telling them they're going to the wrong spot. The British don't think they are. The Rangers are like, trust me, we've memorized every square inch of this beach. We know exactly where we're supposed to be. You need to take us over there. So they change course, but they're wasting time, right? Because they're bombarding Point du Hoc, and they need to be able to land and start climbing that cliff the second those bombs and naval gunfire stop. As they begin making their way to the right drop-off point, the seas are so rough that some of these boats are getting so much water in them that 2 of them actually end up sinking. And the other boats have to make the hard decision to just keep pushing forward because they don't have time to stop and save these guys. Another Navy ship's gonna have to come in after them and pick them up later. And just like that, before they even hit the beach, they are already going from 225 Rangers down to 180. By the time they reach the beach at Point du Hoc, they are 40 minutes behind schedule, meaning that the bombardment has ended 40 minutes ago and the Nazis have had about 30 minutes to regroup and get ready for this attack that they know is coming. This is already catastrophic to the success of this mission, but there's nothing they can do but keep pushing forward because they can't do it a different day. There's 156,000 other men that are about to hit the beaches, and if they don't take out these guns, they are going to get bombarded with 155mm artillery fire. And to make things worse, because the Rangers are 40 minutes behind schedule, it means they've got about 20 minutes to scale a 110-foot cliff under enemy gunfire, get up there, fight the enemy, and destroy the artillery before everybody else starts landing on the beach.
Holy hell. Do you know the pressure? Well, that's why they're the greatest generation.
Let's go to work.
Lomell's boat is one of the first ones to beach itself. They drop the door. He goes running out first. He's going to lead his men into combat. He's supposed to be in about ankle deep water. He takes one step and sinks. He's completely consumed by the water. In hindsight, he thinks that one of the bombs from the RAF missed its target, created a crater right where the water line is. It filled with water, and that's what he was sucked into. But his men end up pulling him out, and as soon as his men get him pulled out, he gets shot in the back. And Lomell, having been shot and almost drowned in the matter of a couple of seconds, doesn't really know what happened, so he turns around thinking that he'd been shot, and the first person that he sees is that private that had threatened him. "I'll see you in combat, First Sergeant." His brain immediately thinks, this motherfucker just shot me. So he goes and grabs this kid, and the medic and all the other men have to pull Lomell off of him. We're like, no, he didn't shoot you. He didn't shoot you. It was the enemy. So Lomell turns and runs into combat. His men go running after him, and Lomell and the rest of Dog Company manage to scale the 110-foot cliff under enemy gunfire in under 10 minutes. Okay, just for the record, I can't get my wife and kids in the car in under 10 minutes, and these guys got 30 men with guns and 50-pound backpacks up a 110-foot vertical cliff under enemy gunfire in 10 minutes. That's crazy. Lomell's Dog Company and Easy Company are the first ones up the cliff, and the minute they get up there, they are immediately disoriented, and all their plans go right out the window. Remember, they studied the terrain. They know what it's supposed to look like up there, and it does not look like that now. The Allied forces have bombarded Point du Hoc with 380 tons of ordnance, okay? What they're looking at now resembles the surface of the moon. There's no time to make a new plan. The clock is ticking, and they have to destroy these guns, okay? Given a lack of instruction, you have to resort to destruction. All of the Rangers proceed to dive into one of these massive craters from a bomb. They said these craters were so big that they could easily fit 15 to 20 men. Half the men in the crater pop up and start returning fire to the Germans, giving cover for the other half of the men to jump to the next nearest crater. Then they begin returning fire so that the other half can catch up to them, and they begin using bounding or leapfrogging to go all the way to where one of these guns are. They can see the massive gun barrel sticking up in the air, pointed at Omaha Beach. They finally get to the gun and they hop down in the artillery emplacement. It's not a gun, it's a fucking telephone pole that's propped up to look like a gun barrel. Immediately, Lomell is like, what the fuck is going on? But we can't wait. We have to keep going. There's potentially 5 more guns, and we need to take them out too. So they begin bounding again to the next gun. It's a telephone pole. The next gun, it's a telephone pole. Soon, they've been to all 6 artillery emplacements, and all of them are telephone poles. The guns aren't even here. Lomell is furious. He's got steam coming out of his ears. Was all this for nothing? Were the guns ever here? Was this just a clever ploy by the Germans and the US military intelligence fell for it? Did he just risk his life and all the lives of his men for literally no reason at all? And as Lomell's trying to figure out what to do next, there's this underground fortress that they didn't even tell him was there. They just found it. So Easy Company ends up going in. They're going to clear out the fortress while the rest of Dog Company goes and tries to find these guns. And if they can't find the guns, they're going to go to the road back behind Point du Hoc and try to hold it to prevent German reinforcements from going to Omaha and Utah Beach. So Easy and Dog Company split up. Dog Company heads out to go defend this road, and as they're making their way there, Lomell notices a set of ruts in one of the roads roads, like something really heavy drove through when the ground was wet. He wants to go investigate, but also he can't. He's literally accomplished nothing so far, and he has to go defend this road and prevent reinforcements. He has to do something to help the guys out on the beach. So what he decides to do is he's going to send the rest of his company to go defend that road. They all know what they're doing. He grabs his best buddy, Jack Kuhn, and him and Jack are going to go investigate these ruts real quick. It's probably nothing, but he has to know. So Lomell and Jack take off running, following these ruts, and after about a mile, it actually leads to all 6 of the German guns.
Wow.
I told you I would find you.
Now, they don't know this at the time, but the reasons the Germans moved the guns to an alternate location was because all of the Allied bombing raids that took place prior to Normandy had orders that they weren't allowed to come back to Great Britain and land if they still had bombs. If they had bombs left after their mission, they were ordered to drop those bombs in the English Channel, or they could drop them on any German military installation they could find along the way. And as it would have it, by sheer coincidence, most of the time, the last German military installation before going into the English Channel was Point Dhawk. So it had been getting pounded for weeks and months by just random bombs at random times. And because of that, the Germans realized that they needed to move the guns to an alternate location, and the American and Allied forces had no idea. From there,
And that's why they had those bomb craters that they could leapfrog through. This is all starting to make sense.
the Germans were planning on having the men in the underground tunnel network at Point Dhawk be able to call back targeting information to the further back guns, and they'd still be able to fire on all the beaches. And the only reason these guns aren't firing at this exact moment is because Easy Company is down in that fortress fighting the Germans. And apparently the Germans that are supposed to be manning these guns haven't heard anything yet, because they're still back 50 yards away dicking off at their little camp, leaving the guns completely unmanned. So they both sneak up to these gun emplacements, and Lomell tells Jack, hey, give me your thermite grenade, keep your gun pointed on those guys over there. If they start coming towards us, light them up, and that'll be my signal to hop out of the hole, and we'll try to run off back to Dog Company. So Jack postures up with his gun pointed at the Germans off in the distance. Lomell hops down in the hole. He starts using these thermite grenades. Now, it's a grenade, but it doesn't go boom. It's not loud. It just burns at 4,000 degrees. And he takes one of these grenades, shoves it down the first gun barrel, goes to the next one, shoves another thermite grenade down that gun barrel. He's out of thermite grenades. Every ranger was only issued one. He knows he's going to have to go back and get more thermite grenades and come back to destroy these guns, but he can't leave 4 guns perfectly operational. Anything could happen between now and then. So what he does is he takes his field coat off, wraps it around the buttstock of his rifle, and uses it to quietly break all the sighting equipment that he possibly can. And he's just jamming shit in all the traversing mechanisms, doing everything he can to ruin these guns the best he can without more thermite grenades. Once he's satisfied, him and Jack run back to Dog Company, get more thermite grenades, go back to the guns. Thank God they're still not guarding them, and they finish destroying the other 4 guns. So this is great news. The mission's accomplished. Now Dog Company just has to go hold this road for 24 hours until they get hit with reinforcements from Omaha and Utah Beach. As they're walking back to Dog Company, Jack kind of looks over at Lomell and is like, you know, it's probably a good thing we didn't get in a firefight back there. I've only got 1 magazine of ammunition. At which point Lomell is like, what? Why? He's like, I lost it at some point during, you know, all the climbing and running around from bomb crater to bomb crater. So yeah, I've only had 15 bullets on me this entire time. And he's like, why didn't you ask me for some? And Jack's like, I don't know, I didn't think about it. Regardless, they make their way back over to the road to link back up with Dog Company. When they get there, Dog Company is in the middle of a firefight. Dog Company's on one side of the road, hiding in some foxholes or a ditch or whatever. On the other side of the road, there's a house and a German machine gun nest that they're having this firefight with. Lomell gets in there, figures out what's going on. Basically, his entire company is planning on just bum rushing a German machine gun nest. And he's like, well, hold on. He's feeling pretty good at this time, right? I mean, he took out those guns basically by himself. He's got that main character energy flowing. He's like, all right, here's the deal. You guys stay here, hand me that bazooka, arm the charge in the back, I'll take care of this. So they arm the charge in the back, hand him the bazooka, he goes running up, pops up out of the ditch with the bazooka, aims at the machine gun nest, they start returning fire, Lomell fires a bazooka, click! His guys didn't arm the bazooka round the right way. So he almost gets shot, ducks back down into the ditch. Well, that was kind of it's only gonna work once strategy, so we can't really replicate that now. So it looks like we are gonna bum rush this machine gun position. So he starts getting his guys ready, and he's like counting down, and one of his guys just like jumps the gun, like 1, 2, and he jumps up and goes to run. Germans open up with machine gun fire. He stumbles back into the trench and ends up landing on one of the other Rangers' bayonets on his thigh. So now he's another guy down just from him being a dumbass. So they get that guy bandaged up, leave him him in the trench, and the rest of them go assault this machine gun nest, take it out. Now they've secured the road. From there, Lomell's got like 12 guys left. He picks his 2 fastest guys and instructs them to run back to Point du Hoc, taking separate routes. That way, if one of them get caught, the other one should, in theory, still make it back, and deliver the message to Lieutenant Colonel Rudder. Mission accomplished. We've destroyed the guns, and I desperately need reinforcements up to hold this road. Luckily, both men end up making it back to Rudder. They deliver the message. He's super happy about it. The problem is, all of the Rangers' communication equipment got damaged with all the water from the beach landing. In addition to that, they asked for more reinforcements to be able to hold Point du Hoc and secure the road. Unfortunately, there aren't any. What the Rangers have now is all they're gonna get. So Rudder sends Lomell's guys back to him with the message, hold until duly relieved. Not exactly what Lomell wanted to hear, but it's what we gotta do. So him and his men are just hiding, waiting to ambush anybody that's going to reinforce the beach. Luckily, after a couple of hours, more Rangers show up, about 50, 60 guys, and they line up along the road too. The Rangers are now spread out, covering about 300 to 400 yards of this road. About an hour later, an entire German battalion attacks, but they attack all the way on the other end of the Ranger formation. Lomell and Dog Company are the furthest away from it, so Lomell orders his men to hold their fire and not give up their position. That way, they're there to surprise them in case they try to flank the other Rangers. The Rangers repel the attack fairly quickly, which tells Lomell he definitely made the right decision, because that was just testing them. They wanted to know how many Rangers were there, where they were at, and what they were capable of. And now they don't know that Lomell and Dog Company are there to help too. About an hour later, the Germans attack again, and they attack so hard, so quick, that they end up fracturing the Ranger line, and the other 2 companies are forced to retreat. And by the time Lomell gets word that they're retreating, the Germans are already behind him, and he's completely cut off. So with the rest of the Rangers being driven back and Lomell and Dog Company being the only ones left behind enemy lines to guard this road, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to continue to guard the road to prevent reinforcements from making it to the beach, because that's what the mission is. Back at Point du Hoc with the rest of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, they are boxed in on 3 sides by the Germans, and they have the ocean to their back. They have nowhere to go, and they are just stuck there trying to survive. Rudder finally comes to the realization that Dog Company has more than likely been killed in action, since they didn't make it back with everybody else. So with that in mind, and needing to keep himself from being overrun, he calls for naval gunfire into the enemy lines, which is actually where Lomell and Dog Company are. The USS Texas begins bombarding that exact area. For the next 2 days, the Rangers at Point du Hoc fight for their survival, while Lomell and Dog Company are stuck behind enemy lines, guarding the road, while the USS Texas is constantly bombarding them. They pretty much just have to keep their heads down, hope that a large formation of Germans don't come looking for them, and hope that the USS Texas doesn't blow them off the face of the earth. Despite all of this, Lomell is still determined to stop reinforcements from making it to the beach, and if they do come marching by, he is going to attempt to do something about it, but with only 12 men, it's almost certainly a death sentence, and luckily, that doesn't end up happening. So while that's good, it is still a very long, very shitty 2 days, because this entire mission was only supposed to be about a 12-hour ordeal. None of the Rangers packed food. They packed very little water. They are all starving. They're dehydrated, and at one point, they all had to start using their helmets as toilets. Then on the 2nd day, the Sherman tanks come rolling up from the beach. They drive the Germans back. Lomell and Dog Company are able to regroup with the rest of the 2nd Ranger Battalion. Lomell reports back to Rudder. Rudder's pumped. He thought Lomell and Dog Company were dead. And then Rudder realizes,
he was
oh shit,
firing
I've
at
had the
him.
USS Texas shooting cars at you guys for the past 48 hours. My bad. At which point Lomell presumably is like, don't worry about it. I've got plot armor. It's no big deal. And again, I'm assuming here, but it's around this point where Lomell goes, oh shit, I got shot 2 days ago. And he pulls up his shirt, looks at his gunshot wound. It's right through the side, through the muscle, misses all the organs, but it's been like 3 days since he got shot, and he has not been in a very clean environment, and his wound is black and severely infected.
Wow.
Lomell immediately gets loaded up on a boat, sent out to a hospital ship. On the hospital ship, the surgeon is like, that's too much for me to handle here, and he gets sent back to Britain. While at Britain, Lomell undergoes surgery, gets treated with antibiotics. After he's recovered enough to actually, be given some kind of an assignment, it's basically determined by the chain of command, like, hey, we basically sent you in on a death mission. You got shot. You're the one that took out the guns at Point du Hoc. You've done enough. We're not going to send you back into combat. We're actually going to put you in charge of this prison, and this prison is full of American soldiers that skipped out on D-Day. And Lomell's not even a little bit interested. He basically goes AWOL, hitchhikes back to the front line, and links back up with the 2nd Ranger Battalion and Dog Company.
and back.
So he makes it back to his guys, and they're only like 7 miles further inland than they were when he actually left. And everybody kind of thinks that like the Battle of Normandy was like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. It was literally 45 minutes and that was the end of it. But the Battle of Normandy was almost 3 whole months. So they're still in the middle of the same battle where he was injured. He's went back to a different country, gotten surgery, and hitchhiked back to the front line of the very same overall major battle. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, the enemy literally took out Leonard Lomell and he respawned into the same battle, okay? This is the most main character shit that's ever happened. So he gets back to the 2nd Ranger Battalion. He is immediately given a promotion to Sergeant Major, the highest enlisted rank, and then he is also given the Distinguished Service Cross. Now, the Distinguished Service Cross is the 2nd highest award that you can get, right below the Medal of Honor, which raises a question, why on earth is he not being awarded the Medal of Honor? And the answer to that actually lies with the 1st Ranger Battalion that is currently basically a bunch of living legends after fighting through North Africa and Italy. Their commander, William Darby, they were affectionately known as Darby's Rangers. He felt that the Rangers were not a group of individuals that fought on the battlefield together, but they were one singular entity because that's how tight-knit their team was. So with that sentiment in mind, he kind of declared that Rangers weren't really eligible for the Medal of Honor because they didn't feel that one man should be honored, the entire unit should be honored. So on one hand, that's kind of cool, but on the other hand, it's kind of silly because he still allowed the Rangers to get every other singular individual awarded medal.
But not the Medal of Honor.
The Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, so like, why not let him get the Medal of Honor as well? Just seems kind of silly. And Lieutenant Colonel Rudder actually kind of agreed with me, and because of that, when he pinned the Distinguished Service Cross on Lomell's chest, he told him, and I quote, "This is your Medal of Honor." From here, the Rangers are going out on missions, a couple of skirmishes here and there. They end up going to the Battle of Brest. There's this hilltop that nobody else can take called Hill 63. They send the Rangers in. Rangers take over the entire thing. They control the hill until the Battle at Brest is over. They've won that. After that battle, Lomell gets another promotion and he gets a battlefield commission to 2nd Lieutenant, becoming an officer. From here, the Rangers get sent over to a place called the Hertzgen Forest. Very, very dense forest, and it holds virtually no strategic advantage to the Allies, but for some reason, the Germans really seem to think it's important, so the Americans are just gonna fight them for it. They don't even know why. And here's a kicker and sad slash ironic part, but the Germans are actually running on the exact same logic. They also have no need for the Hertzgen Forest, and they don't know why they're fighting there. The only reason they're showing up and fighting so hard is because the Americans are showing up there and fighting so hard. So they think the Americans want it for some type of strategic advantage, and they have no idea why either. So literally both sides of this extremely deadly battle are just operating on, I don't know what you're up to, but fuck you, I'm not gonna allow it.
Guess what? What? Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you!
So Lomell and the Rangers end up showing up, and he's thinking in his head like, okay, I'm an officer now. They're going to send us into battle. I'm going to go take the hard objective, whatever that is. We're going to win. Hooray. But the leadership doesn't really understand how to use the Rangers or know how to use them yet. So they just end up putting them out on the line and tell them to hold this ground and don't let the Germans through. And Lomell's pissed about this because A, this isn't how Rangers are supposed to be used.
No.
And B, this job absolutely sucks. You got to remember, it's like October 1944 over in like the Belgium, Germany area. Okay, it's super cold. And all these guys are doing is basically hiding in their foxholes, freezing their asses off all day. So this goes on for like a month, just being cold, having the Germans drop artillery on top of them. And then after a month, on seemingly a random day, they get orders to move out. They've got some dangerous mission they're supposed to go on. There's a town called Bergstein, and right next to that town is this gigantic hill known as Castle Hill by the Germans, but the Americans call it Hill 400 because it is 400 meters high. Hill 400 is the high ground of the Hertzgen Forest, and it is the reason that they're not making any headway in this battle because the Germans can see everything and they just call in artillery on top of them anytime they try to move forces forward. So the American forces have to take this hill and this town. The problem is every time they move an infantry regiment in, they just get beat back and nobody can seem to penetrate and take over this town and this hill. The last American unit that tried had just over 5,000 men and tanks and they failed. So now they're going to send in the 2nd Ranger Battalion with approximately 500 men. Lomell, his guys at Dog Company and F Company are going to be responsible for taking the hill, and all the other Ranger companies are going to be taking Bergstein. They spent the first 2 days sending out patrols, finding every single German machine gun nest and fortification, and after they know where every single German is, they launch a surgical attack and they're able to capture both Bergstein and the hill in an hour and a half. But the problem is both Dog and Fox Company commanders got killed during this attack, and now Lomell is the only officer on the hill and he is in charge of everything. So now he's got to hold this hill for the next 24 hours till reinforcements show up. It shouldn't be that hard, but what Leonard Lomell doesn't know is that the only objective that the Germans care about in the Hertzgen Forest is Hill 400. You see, Hill 400 is high enough that if the Allies have it, they're going to be able to see far enough into enemy lines that they're going to be able to see a massive German force amassing, and they're going to know that a major German offensive is coming, and that is what is the Ardennes Offensive, or the Battle of the Bulge. This is Hitler's last-ditch effort to turn the tide of World War II, and it relies heavily on the element of surprise, and if the Allies have Hill 400 and they see it coming, it could ruin the entire plan. So the Germans absolutely have to retake this hill. And because of that, the German general in charge sends in his best infantry unit with the orders that whoever's able to retake that hill is all going to get their men Iron Crosses, which is like a very high-ranking German medal for valor, and they're all going to get 2 weeks of leave. Back on the hill, Lomell immediately orders all of the Rangers to start digging foxholes because he knows a fight might be coming, he just doesn't know how bad, and either way, you need foxholes to play defense, so that's what they try to do. Problem, it's winter, there's snow and ice all over the ground, and there's tree roots all over this dirt, so whatever foxholes they're able to dig, they're not very deep. So an hour later, when the German artillery starts landing, it absolutely devastates every Ranger on top of that hill.
Wow.
Almost every Ranger on top of the hill is hit with shrapnel from German artillery. It's just a matter of how bad their individual injuries are. Lomell himself is also hit in the hand, and his index finger is dangling by a piece of connective tissue. Between Dhawk and Fox Company, about 130 Rangers attack this hill, and right out of the gate, Lomell is already down to about 40 men that can move around and actually fight, and his mom's going to be pissed off because he's not going to be able to play the piano with 9 fingers. Lomell immediately realizes that playing conventional defense isn't going to work. He doesn't really have many foxholes, and even if he did, he doesn't have enough men to man them. So he decides the best defense is a good offense. He sends out 2-man scout squads, and they're going to patrol around the base of the hill, and whenever they see that the Germans are starting to set up an attack, they're going to report back where the Germans are going to attack, and all of the men that Lomell has, all 40 to 50 guys, are going to run and meet that attack head on and drive them back. And that's exactly what happens. Shortly after that shelling, the Germans attack, Lomell and his men meet them head on, they drive them back, they get shelled again, they scout, they find where the Germans are going to attack again, they meet it head on again, and this goes on over and over and over again. Lomell and his men are running around all over this hill, getting in every single firefight that there is, and when they're not doing that, they're trying to render aid to all the guys that are wounded. But to the Germans, it feels a lot different because every time they try to attack from a different spot at a different angle, they run face first into 50 pissed off Army Rangers. So the Germans are thinking there's like 1,000 Army Rangers on top of this hill, but regardless, they keep on attacking and they keep on shelling them. And after 24 hours, when they're supposed to be getting reinforcements, Lomell is down to himself and about 25 other men that can fight. He calls for reinforcements, but there's none available because the Germans are also furiously attacking the town next to the hill as well. D-Day is commonly referred to as the longest day, but according to Lomell, this was by far the longest day of his life, and it made D-Day look like child's play. Which sounds absolutely crazy, but if anybody would know, it's him. At this point, there's no reinforcements on the way. He has a ton of injured men, a ton of men have been killed, and he only has like 25 guys left that can even kind of fight. He knows that he can't keep doing this much longer, if at all. So at this point, Lomell pulls his NCOs aside and asks them what they think about retreating. He figures they can get all the ambulatory men off the hill, and all the men that are too wounded to be moved can be captured by the Germans. He's been fighting them for the past 6 months, and he knows that the Germans are at least going to give them aid and take care of them to some degree.
Best we came up with, sir, is like, fuck it, you know?
Fuck it.
It's gonna be a shit show no matter what we do.
All right.
Every single one of his sergeants is against it, and they are ready to fight to the death about it. So Lomell says, okay, that's what we'll do. And the next day, they do the exact same thing all over again, and somehow they managed to hold on to this hill. That night, after 40 hours of straight combat, the Germans finally let up, and Lomell's able to radio down to the town and say that it's all quiet on the hill. And apparently they stopped attacking at the town too. So the Rangers down there are finally able to come up and start helping carry all of these wounded men down from this hill. Worth noting, if you've never carried a grown man on a litter, it is a motherfucker of a job, and that's if it's in good conditions in daylight on level ground. I can't imagine having to carry this many men in the dark down a hill covered in snow on a litter after 40 hours of straight combat. But the Rangers somehow managed to get it done, and despite his hand being messed up, Lomell is the last man to leave the top of that hill as he lets the other Rangers take it over. During the 40 hours of combat for Hill 400, Lomell and 106 other Rangers were wounded and 19 men were killed in action. 24 hours after the other Rangers take over, they hand it over to another Army unit that relieves them, and 9 days after that, Hill 400 is retaken by the Germans during the Battle of the Bulge. When the Battle of the Bulge kicks off, Lomell is in a convoy headed back to Paris, hopefully to get surgery to save his finger, and because this major German offensive just kicks off, his convoy gets diverted and they have to go hold a road in case the Germans show up there, and sure enough, They do. So now Lomell, being the only officer there, has to lead this ragtag group of
All
whoever the
the
fuck
wrong
soldiers
things.
into combat to fight the Germans. He does. They repel the Germans, but Lomell ends up getting burned and blown up and is now suffering from internal bleeding. So now he's in a field hospital
Damn.
getting treated for internal bleeding, and while he's in there, General Eisenhower signs an order that any soldier that's been wounded at least twice and has earned a medal for valor gets 30 days of leave. Lomell qualifies, and he absolutely wants to go home for a month, understandably so. The problem is the doctor's not going to release him until he can submit a stool sample that shows that he's not still suffering from internal bleeding. So he does what absolutely anybody would do. He has one of his buddies shit in that cup for him, and then he goes home.
What am I, a chimpanzee?
Shit in a box for me.
Once he gets home, he has to undergo multiple surgeries to save the use of his hand. Once it's all said and done, the war's basically over. He's not getting shit back overseas. So then Leonard Lomell goes back home and he proceeds to do absolutely nothing, which completely justified. The guy probably needs a minute to decompress. So this goes on for a couple of months, and after a while, his mom has finally had enough of it. And she's like, Leonard, go talk to that girl you were talking to before the war or something. Get out of my house. And Lomell is like, Mom, I don't have anything. I don't have a car. I sent all the money I made during the war back home to you guys so you guys could get by. I didn't save any for myself. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with my life. At which point, Mom, being a complete badass, is like, here you go, kid. I saved $1,500 out of the money you sent me. And he's able to go and buy a brand new car. So he shows up with his new wheels, impresses his old sweetheart, Charlotte. They start dating again. He starts going to law school. He graduates law school. He marries Charlotte. A couple of years into being a lawyer, he gets in trouble because he wrestles with another lawyer inside of the judge's office to settle the dispute. But, you know, everything's going great. It's fantastic. Ends up having a bunch of kids, running his own law firm. The poor kid that was literally catching fish and clams and selling them to restaurants during the Great Depression that grew up dirt poor is now a millionaire lawyer, and he is living the American dream.
That's
and my favorite part of the
awesome.
story is he gets older in his late 50s, his 60s, his 70s. He gets the opportunity to go back to the places that he had battles in World War II. He gets to go back to Point du Hoc. He gets to go back to Hill 400. And when he's at Hill 400, he's kind of a celebrity and everybody wants to talk to him, and it's because the German historians and the German active duty military people there that are giving him the tour and everything want to know how many men did he have on top of that hill. And he's like, not many, why? And the Germans showed him their books and translated it from their perspective, and up until this point, they had always been under the impression that the Americans had a massive force on top of Hill 400, and that's why the Germans weren't able to retake it. Not only did Lomell's battle tactic work at the time, but it worked so well that he had been fooled for 40 years after the fact. Now, because Hill 400, and by extension, the entire battle of the Hurtgen Forest, was such an unnecessary and bloody battle, it was deemed a huge embarrassment and failure by the upper level leaderships of the US military. Because of that, a lot of the men that partook in that battle that did courageous, heroic, incredible things like Lomell, they never ended up getting the recognition they deserved because the upper level leadership just didn't want to acknowledge that this battle even happened. They just wanted to sweep it under the rug and not talk about it. Despite that, over 60 years after the fact, Lomell would finally get awarded a Silver Star for his actions on Hill 400 in 2007. In the later years of his life, Leonard Lomell would end up getting a lot of attention for being the hero that he was during World War II. And his response to that was always, we weren't heroes, we were just good Rangers. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out. You know what? I'm just going to level with you guys. There's no way that you can research people like this and not feel like a giant bitch the entire time, okay? I feel like a big tough guy because I can do a lot of push-ups and I've been doing jujitsu for 15 years. And then you start reading about Bud Lomell, who got shot at D-Day and didn't just walk it off. He proceeded to climb a 100-foot cliff in 10 minutes after getting shot, while he's also continuing to get shot at by Nazis with machine guns. And then he goes and takes out an entire artillery battery by himself, saving tens of thousands of people. And that's just the beginning of this dude's story. Dudes were just built different back then. I don't even know. Regardless, I guess now at least we know the answer to who's the most important man at D-Day. Thanks for watching. I gotta go.
When our ears returned to normal and I was sitting with Jack that night or the next night, Jack said, it's a damn good thing you didn't need me to fire my weapon. I only had one clip. You only had one clip. I said, where was your other ammunition? He said, I lost it when we were running down that road, and I don't know where. I just had one clip in my pocket, one clip in my submachine gun, and I said, well, why didn't you ask me for mine? He said, I didn't think about it. So I practically got an unarmed guy up there with 1 or 2 clips.
This is a great historical vision that I didn't know about D-Day. I'll tell y'all that my grandfather died in Belgium in 1943. So I'm a Gold Star grandchild. He never got to see my mother. So that's why I gravitate towards all of Nick's European theater, World War II history, because he does the deep dive. He's looking into the stuff that I didn't pick up in school. Nick, great video. I appreciate you putting it out, and you know, I'm glad that I could sit here and watch it with all of y'all. I appreciate y'all for staying. If you've stayed this long into the video, if you would give us a like, if you might subscribe, rock on. Enjoy the next video that you're going to in your life. Y'all take care. Talk to you later. Bye.